Welcome into The Explainer. Look, if you're the kind of person who likes to strip away the noise and just get right down to the structural core of a story, well, you are definitely in the right place. Today we're unpacking a really highly charged, viral video that details these massive fraud cases in Minnesota. And the source material here is fascinating. It lays out multi-million-dollar crimes, but it also wraps those objective legal facts in some really intense political commentary. So our goal today is to pull all of that apart. We want to give you absolute clarity on the staggering legal facts and also show you exactly how this content creator has chosen to frame them. We're going to break down the numbers, the indictments, and the media strategy behind all the outrage.
Okay, let's dive into this with the number that started it all. $250 million. That is the staggering monetary scale of the initial Feeding Our Future COVID fraud scheme highlighted in our source. We're talking $250 million here. This wasn't just some minor accounting error, right? This was a massive, highly organized theft of taxpayer money that was specifically allocated to feed hungry children during the pandemic. And honestly, when you hear a number like that, it immediately contextualizes the sheer level of outrage that is fueling the viral video we're looking at today.
Here is our quick roadmap for today. Section 1. The Feeding Our Future case. 2. The new DOJ Medicaid indictments. 3. The political blame game. And finally, 4. Audience and action.
Starting off with Section 1. The Feeding Our Future case and the final verdict.
So, going into the sentencing, there was a massive gap in what was being asked for. The prosecution demanded a staggering 50 years, while the defense asked for a mere 3. Ultimately, the judge handed down a sentence of 41.5 years behind bars for Amy Bock, who was convicted as the mastermind behind that $250 million theft. Now, the host of our source video heavily celebrates this specific sentence. He points out to his audience that for a woman of her age, 41 years is essentially a life sentence, and he really frames this outcome as a powerful, life-ending message to any other potential fraudsters out there, calling it a true moment of redemption and justification for the American taxpayer.
But you know, the creator doesn't just stop at the verdict itself. He shifts his focus to the media coverage of the investigation. He passionately praises an independent journalist named Nick Shirley, actually framing him as a warrior poet patriot who single-handedly uncovered the scheme while the mainstream corporate media totally ignored it. And then he makes this rather explosive claim. He states that politicians actually tried to block these independent media efforts by initiating specific legislation called the Stop Nick Shirley Act, rather than actually going after the fraudsters themselves.
Now, what's really interesting about this next part is the pivot. Right in the middle of celebrating a 41-year prison sentence and decrying political corruption, the video executes this immediate, almost whiplash-inducing transition straight into a sponsorship pitch for a Medicare advisory company called Chapter. It is such a fascinating look at the modern creator economy. You have this intense, passionate news delivery directly intertwined with monetization. He assures his viewers that this company is entirely unbiased and isn't trying to sell them anything, basically leveraging the immense trust he just built reporting on the fraud case to drive his audience straight to a sponsor.
Moving on to Section 2, the completely new DOJ Medicaid indictments.
And once again, the numbers here are just jaw-dropping. The Department of Justice uncovered an additional $90 million stolen across 7 different state-managed Medicaid programs in Minnesota. So just to be absolutely clear, we are now talking about a completely separate, active investigation. And the creator is visibly energized by this breaking news. He points out that the initial $250 million fraud was apparently just the tip of the iceberg, and he is thrilled that the DOJ is now aggressively pursuing this entirely new network of theft.
To really build his narrative, the creator heavily relies on the exact words of the prosecutors. He pulls up this incredibly powerful quote from Assistant Attorney General Colin McDonald of the National Fraud Enforcement Division. McDonald states that these programs were systematically pilfered by fraudsters who treated Minnesota programs as their personal piggy bank. The host expresses immense admiration for McDonald here. He praises his direct, unapologetically aggressive language, viewing it as a sign of really strong, uncompromising law enforcement. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how that personal piggy bank operated in reality. Take the Minnesota Housing Stabilization Services Program, for example. Back in 2020, it was estimated to cost a relatively modest $2.5 million to help homeless populations. But skip ahead to 2024, and due entirely to fraud, that cost had exploded to $104 million. It's just a staggering reality of systematic theft. And as the source notes, because of this massive financial drain, the state literally had to shut the program down entirely, ripping away those crucial services from the vulnerable people who actually needed them.
And incredibly, the scale of the inflation is even more dramatic when we look at the state's autism program. Just 6 years ago, it cost taxpayers about $600,000. Present day, it's skyrocketed to over $400 million. The DOJ clarifies that this insane jump was not driven by supply and demand or better healthcare access. It was pure, unadulterated fraud. The host uses this specific comparison to channel some truly fierce outrage, pointing out that these funds were siphoned directly away from autistic children whose very lives depend on these subsidies. He literally describes the act as pure, unadulterated evil.
Which brings us to another incredible soundbite from Assistant A.G. McDonald, who issues a very stern warning looking directly into the camera. He says, "Eat, drink, and be married today because your days of frolicking and freedom are numbered. We will claw back every dollar you have stolen." The host of our source video absolutely loves this. He praises this rhetoric heavily, viewing it as a much-needed return to unapologetic, hard-nosed justice in America, and he even says it gives him immense hope for the younger generation of prosecutors coming up.
All right, let's look at Section 3, the political blame game. So the crucial point is that the host views this fraud not just as an isolated criminal act, but as a systemic failure that was orchestrated or at the very least permitted by specific political figures. He specifically targets and blames Representative Ilhan Omar, Governor Tim Walz, Attorney General Keith Ellison, and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey for creating this ecosystem. And he doesn't just stop at blaming them. He explicitly demands further federal investigations into their potential awareness or direct involvement in these massive schemes.
Now, to provide a complete and fair picture, the source video actually does include the direct response from one of these politicians. Representative Ilhan Omar issued a public statement saying, "Any claim that I had knowledge of the scheme is flat out false." She then goes on to express gratitude that Amy Bock and the other individuals who defrauded taxpayers are facing DOJ accountability. It's absolutely crucial to see this statement so we can contrast the raw legal facts and the official denials against the creator's highly charged ongoing narrative.
However, the host vehemently and aggressively rejects Representative Omar's denial. He's just not buying it. He then takes his political framing a step further by explicitly crediting Donald Trump for the DOJ's current energy and aggression in pursuing these fraudsters. But interestingly, he also uses this moment to criticize conservative figures within his own political sphere. He specifically calls out Thomas Massie and Tucker Carlson, suggesting they are failing the very movement that Trump built. It's really a fascinating look at how complex and multi-layered political media framing can be.
Let's wrap up with Section 4, Audience and Action.
Let's move on and see how this builds, because notice how expertly the host turns this heavy news reporting into active community participation. For anyone watching how modern media is built, this right here is the blueprint. He gives his audience very clear steps. First, comment below on who should be arrested next. Second, like and share the video everywhere to help make common sense go viral. And third, subscribe so you don't miss the upcoming developments in the case. He is actively transforming passive viewers into a highly engaged political and media community.
And that brings us perfectly to the host's provocative final poll question, which he puts directly to his viewers. Who would you like to see arrested next? It is an absolute masterclass in converting raw legal data, millions of dollars, decades in prison, complex Medicaid policies, into highly partisan, heavily monetized media. So the next time you see outrage go viral, ask yourself, are you just getting the facts, or are you being steered into the funnel? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.